Namaste for all. Now I am going to do my presentation on Unit 2, the first topic, prenatal development. ಅಂದರೆ ಜನನ ಪೂರ್ವ ಅವಧಿ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. Let's see, the main objectives of this study is, my main goal is, what I'm going to do is to explain the role of conceptions, the main route for the all the three stages of pregnancy, period of zygote, period of embryo, and the period of fetus. So I want to explain the role and importance of conception, implantation, once the ovum and sperm gets mingled with each other. After all, what is this stage? That stage is called as implantations, the root. Then the placenta and the umbilical cord, the role of the umbilical cord and the placenta. How these are important? Why? Because this gives the nourishment, this produces the nourishments to the unborn baby, when the baby is inside the mother's womb. And to understand the importance of a period of zygote, what is the main importance of period of zygote? Why? Because this is the very shortest period of all three stages of pregnancy when compared to the two fetus, the period of embryo and the period of fetus. It is the very shortest period, so it is the basic, it gives basic foundation for the period of pregnancies. So then the precautions one should take during the times of, what are all the precautionary measures one should take during this period, I am going to explain. So then what are all the outcomes I want to expect from the student once they attend the session is, not only my expectations, after attending these sessions, the student can able to understand the role of conceptions, the main route which gives the route for the stages of pregnancy, which gives the route for the pregnancy, and the implantation and placenta, the role of placenta and umbilical cord or umbilical cord. You can pronounce it in both the ways, umbilical cord or umbilical cord. Should demonstrate once they get the knowledge, they demonstrate to the others. They can demonstrate and they can spread the knowledge to the others about the importance of period of zygote, ಅಂಡಾವಧಿಯ ಪ್ರಾಮುಖ್ಯತೆಯನ್ನು ಹೇಳ್ಬೋದು. Then the precautionary measures, what are all the precautionary measures the mother has to take during this period, especially why? Because this is the foundation for the all three periods. It is the main and initial stage of pregnancy, and to help oneself as well as the others. Once they get the knowledge, they can spread the knowledge to the oneself as well as in the family and to the society also. Then the contents, what are all the contents I have added here is the introduction to prenatal development. What is the prenatal development? ಜನನ ಪೂರ್ವ ಅವಧಿ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು ಅಂತ. Then the prenatal stages in the sense, especially there is a conception I have mentioned, and the period of zygote. This is the first initial stage of prenatal stage. Then the figure of fallopian tube, I have shown one the figure from the book, Laura Burke's book. I have shown one figure of the fallopian tubes during this period of zygote. Then references, what are all the books I have referred to cover this topic. Then MCQs, multiple choice questions, which helps for your exams, and which improves your knowledge also. But I didn't mention the answers, but because this is an assignment or a homework for you to find out the answers. Why? Because once you attend the sessions, you will find the answers in the sessions itself, in my presentation itself. Let's see, is the main introduction to prenatal development. See, the sperm and ovum that unite to form the new individual. The sperm from the male and the ovum from the female that unite, that becomes together. They are unite each other to form a new individual, as like them, are uniquely suited for the task of reproduction. Uniquely, see, in every individual it is uniquely uniting in a different way. They are uniting and suited for the task of reproductions of the same kind of new individuals. ಇಲ್ಲಿ sperm ಅಂದ್ರೆ ವೀರ್ಯಾಣು ಮತ್ತು ಅಂಡಾಣು, ಹೆಂಗಸರಲ್ಲಿ ಉತ್ಪತ್ತಿಯಾಗುವಂಥ ಅಂಡಾಣು, ಗಂಡಸರಲ್ಲಿ ಉತ್ಪತ್ತಿಯಾಗುವಂಥ ವೀರ್ಯಾಣು ಇನ್ ದ ಸೆನ್ಸ್ ಸ್ಪರ್ಮ್, ಓಮ್ ಇನ್ ದ ಸೆನ್ಸ್ ಅಂಡಾಣು. ಇದು ಎರಡು ಜೊತೆಯಾಗಿ ಕೂಡಿಕೊಂಡು ದ ನ್ಯೂ ಇಂಡಿವಿಜುವಲ್ಸ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಹೊಸದಾಗಿ ಒಂದು ಮಗುವಿನ ಜನನ, ಹೊಸದಾಗಿ ಒಂದು ಜೀವಿಯ ಜನನವಾಗ್ತದೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಆರ್ ಯುನೀಕ್ಲಿ. ಇದು ದಿಸ್ ಇಸ್ ಡಿಫರ್ ಫ್ರಮ್ ಒನ್ ಪರ್ಸನ್ ಟು ಅನದರ್ ಪರ್ಸನ್, ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಕಾಲ್ಡ್ ಅಸ್ ಯುನೀಕ್ಲಿ. ಇದು ಎಲ್ಲರಂತೆ ಎಲ್ಲರ ಬಾಡಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದೇ ಥರ ಇರುವುದಿಲ್ಲ, ಯುನೀಕ್. They are separate, unique kind of. They are not in the same or uniform way. That is uniquely happens suited for the task of reproduction. Reproduction ಅಂದರೆ ತನ್ನದಂಥದೇ ಜೀವಿಯನ್ನು ಉತ್ಪತ್ತಿ ಮಾಡುತ್ತದೆ. Then see here in this stage, ovum is very tiny sphere, very tiny, very small. We can't able to person can see in a naked eye, but it is sometimes it is not possible to see in a naked eye. Why? Because it's a dotted structure, pin dotted or the needle dotted structure, like that is measuring 1 by 175 of an inch and diameter. See the diameter also they have mentioned 1 by 175. In 175 pieces, only one piece. Like it's a very dot like a structure, dot. The size is a very dot. In a pin, if we put a dot, that only that size. So visible to the naked eyes as a dot is size. We can see in the naked eyes also very dot like structures. So ಇದು ಏನು ಇದರ ಗಾತ್ರ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ 1 by ಅಂದರೆ 175ರಲ್ಲಿ 1 ಇಂಚಲ್ಲಿ 175ರಲ್ಲಿ 1ನೇ ಭಾಗದಷ್ಟು ಇರ್ತದೆ ಇದರ ಡಯಾಮೀಟರ್. ಅದರ ಸೈಜ್ ಅಂದರೆ ಅಂಡಾಣುವಿನ ಸೈಜ್ ಅಷ್ಟಿರ್ತದೆ. ವಿ ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಸಿ ಬರಿಗಣ್ಣಿನಿಂದ ನೋಡ್ಬೋದು. ಐ ಆಸ್ ಅ ಡಾಟ್ ದಿ ಸೈಜ್ ಅಂದರೆ ಒಂದು ಸೂಜಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ಡಾಟ್ ಇಟ್ಟಷ್ಟು, ಒಂದು ಸಣ್ಣ ರಂಧ್ರ ಮಾಡಿ ಸಣ್ಣ ಒಂದು ಹೋಲ್ ಇದು ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಹೇಗಿರ್ತದೆ, ಸಣ್ಣದೊಂದು ಬೊಟ್ಟಿಟ್ಟರೆ ಹೇಗಿರ್ತದೆ ಅಷ್ಟೇ ಸಣ್ಣ ಸೈಜ್ ಇರ್ತದೆ ಡಾಟ್. ದ ಇಂಟ್ರೊಡಕ್ಷನ್ ಟು ಕನ್ಸೆಪ್ಷನ್ಸ್, ಮೇನ್ ಇಂಟ್ರೊಡಕ್ಷನ್ಸ್ once in every 28 days. For the women's in a menstrual cycles, normal women's for the normal women's menses happens for once in every 28 days. For most of the women's once in 40 days or once in 28 days or once in 30 days also happens, once in 40 days also happens. In the middle of the women menstrual cycle, conception takes place. In the middle, in the sense of 28, we can divide this into 14. So 14. From the 12 to 16 days, we can expect this conception takes place. So if the ovum gets ready, and ovum bursts from one of her ovaries to two walnut-sized organs deep inside her abdomen. See, there is inside her abdomen, there is a 2 walnut-sized, walnut in the sense the peanut-sized organ is there. In that the ovaries is there. Ovaries which produce the ovaries is one which produce the ovum. From that ovums are burst. So only one ovum produced for women in each month. So women can produce only one ovum. In some extent, in some cases, in some circumstances, in some situations, women can able to produce 2 or 3 ovum, but it's a very rare cases. But women can produce, most of the women can produce only one ovum at a time during a menstrual cycle. So it is drawn into one of 2 fallopian tubes. There are 2 fallopian tubes are there. Then I will show the fallopian tubes on the left and right side. Then the long thin structures. This is the long thin structures. Fallopian tube is nothing but a ಗರ್ಭಕೋಶ ಅಥವಾ ಗರ್ಭನಾಳ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ಬೋದು. ಗರ್ಭಕೋಶ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ಬೇಕಂದ್ರೆ ಗರ್ಭನಾಳ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ಬೋದು. So the long thin structure is the long, very thin structures that lead to the hollow and soft lined uterus. So in the uterus itself it takes place. The fallopian tubes exist in the uterus. That is the long thin structures that lead to a hollow. All forms of structures of the baby. So all this takes place in the fallopian tube. ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಓವಮ್ ಪ್ರತಿ ತಿಂಗಳ ತಾಯಿಯ ಗರ್ಭದಲ್ಲಿ ಅಂದರೆ ತಾಯಿಯ ಋತುಚಕ್ರದಲ್ಲಿ 28 ದಿನಗಳು ಒಮ್ಮೆ ಋತುಮತಿ ಆಗಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ, ಋತುಚಕ್ರವಾಗಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ 28ನೇ ದಿನದ ಮಧ್ಯಭಾಗದಲ್ಲಿ ಅಂದರೆ 14ನೇ ದಿನ, ಕೆಲವರಿಗೆ 12ರಿಂದ 16 ದಿನದ ಈ ಅವಧಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಓವಮ್ ಅಂದರೆ ಅಂಡಾಣು ರೆಡಿ ಆಗಿರ್ತದೆ, ಸಿದ್ಧಗೊಂಡಿರ್ತದೆ. ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಓವಮ್ ಬರ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಫ್ರಮ್ one of her ovaries which produces the ovum. Ovaries is nothing but ovaries which produces the ovum. Ovaries ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಅಂಡಾಶಯ. ಅಂಡಾಶಯದಿಂದ ಈ ಅಂಡಾಣು ಉತ್ಪತ್ತಿ ಆಗ್ತದೆ. ಆ ಅಂಡಾಶಯ ಎಲ್ಲೂ ಇರುವುದಿಲ್ಲ. 2 ವಾಲ್ನಟ್ ಸೈಜ್ಡ್ ಆರ್ಗ್ಯಾನ್ಸ್, 2 ನೆಲಗಡಲೆಯ ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಅಥವಾ ಶೇಂಗಾ ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಇರುವಂತಹ ದೇಹದ ಭಾಗದಲ್ಲಿ ಡೀಪ್ ಇನ್ಸೈಡ್, ಅದರ ಒಳಗಡೆ, ಅದರ ತುಂಬಾ ಒಳಗಡೆ, ತುಂಬಾ ಆಳದ ಗರ್ಭದಲ್ಲಿ ತಾಯಿಯ ಹೊಟ್ಟೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಇರುವಂಥದ್ದು ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಉತ್ಪತ್ತಿ ಆಗ್ತದೆ. ಇಟ್ಸ್ ಡ್ರೌನ್ ಇಂಟು one of two fallopian tubes. There are two fallopian tubes are there. 2 ಗರ್ಭನಾಳಗಳು ಇರ್ತದೆ. ಇಟ್ಸ್ ಅ ಲಾಂಗ್ ಥಿನ್ ಸ್ಟ್ರಕ್ಚರ್. ಇದು ಉದ್ದವಾದ ತೆಳುವಾದಂತಹ ರಚನೆ. that lead to hollow and the soft lined uterus. Soft lined uterus is formed. In the soft lined uterus these structures are formed. Uterus ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಗರ್ಭದಲ್ಲಿ ಈ ರಚನೆಗೊಳ್ಳುತ್ತದೆ fallopian tubes only during the times of this menstrual cycle takes place. Only during this time fallopian tubes exist. ಬರೀ ಋತುಚಕ್ರವಾಗುವ ಸಮಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾತ್ರ ಗರ್ಭನಾಳ ರಚನೆ ಆಗ್ತದೆ. ಸೊ while the ovum travels the spot on the ovary from it was released. See, the ovaries which produce the ovum. See, ovum start to travels in the place of the ovaries where it was released from. So ovum is the travel along in the place of ovaries where it was released. Ovaries one which produce the ovum. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಅಂಡಾಶಯದಲ್ಲೇ ತಿರುಗಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರ್ತದೆ. ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಇದು ಉತ್ಪತ್ತಿ ಆಗ್ತದೆ ಅಲ್ಲೇ ಇದು ಪ್ರಯಾಣ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರ್ತದೆ. Then the corpus luteum, there is no word for this particular word. Corpus luteum is there one that is secretes the hormone, which produces the hormone that prepare the lining of the uterus to receive the ovum. See, that is the one hormone, that is the one gland. Corpus luteum is the one gland which secretes the hormones, which secretes a number of hormones. That is one of the best hormones that successfully prepares the lining of the uterus to receive the ovum. That prepares the lining of the uterus. In the uterus, that prepares one structure, that is it is also produces the fallopian tube also lining to receive the ovum. Receives the ovum that produces one lining in the uterus. ಈ ಕಾರ್ಪಸ್ ಲ್ಯೂಟಿಯಂ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳುವಂತಹ ಒಂದು ಗ್ರಂಥಿ, ಈ ಗ್ರಂಥಿ ಹಾರ್ಮೋನುಗಳನ್ನು ಉತ್ಪತ್ತಿ ಮಾಡ್ತದೆ, ಅಂದರೆ ಅಂತಃಸ್ರಾವವನ್ನು ಉತ್ಪತ್ತಿ ಮಾಡ್ತದೆ. ಇದು ಒಂದು ಲೈನಿಂಗ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಒಂದು ಉದ್ದವಾದ ಚಾಪೆಯಂತ ರಚನೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಇಟ್ಸ್ ಲೈಕ್ ಇಟ್ ಪ್ರೊಡ್ಯೂಸಸ್ ಒನ್ ಬೆಡ್ ಲೈಕ್ ಸ್ಟ್ರಕ್ಚರ್ ಇನ್ ದಿ ಯುಟ್ರಸ್ ಇಟ್ ಸೆಲ್ಫ್. ಒಂದು ಹಾಸಿಗೆ ಅಂತ ರಚನೆಯನ್ನು ಮಾಡ್ತದೆ ಟು ರಿಸೀವ್ಸ್ ದ ಓವಮ್, ಅಂದರೆ ಈ ಅಂಡಾಣುವನ್ನು ಸ್ವೀಕರಿಸಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಒಂದು ಚಾಪೆ ಅಂತ ರಚನೆಯನ್ನು ಸಿದ್ಧಪಡಿಸ್ತದೆ. If pregnancy does not occur, see, the ovum is it's waiting for a sperm. Once the ovum refuses sperms, then women become a pregnancy. If a pregnancy does not occur, if the mingling or mating does not occur, pregnancy will also does not occur. So, if the pregnancy does not occur, the corpus luteum, this gland, shrinks. Because the pregnancy does not occur, right? Because of that, these glands becomes shrinks. The widening glands becomes shrinks. It means it covers it. It becomes a fold. It folds itself, and the lining of the uterus is discarded. The lining also gets away, gets vanished. 2 weeks later with menstruations, 2 weeks after the menstruations, then in the next menstruations that ovum will comes out or goes out with the bleeding. ಮತ್ತೆ ಈ ಒಂದು ವೇಳೆ ಈ ಅಂಡಾಣು ಏನು ಕಾಯ್ತಾ ಇರ್ತದೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಇಟ್ಸ್ ವೇಟಿಂಗ್ ಫಾರ್ ಅ ಸ್ಪರ್ಮ್. ಇಫ್ ದ ಮಿಂಗಲಿಂಗ್, ಒಂದು ವೇಳೆ ಮಿಲನವಾಗದಿದ್ದಲ್ಲಿ, ಸ್ಪರ್ಮ್ ಬರದಿದ್ದಲ್ಲಿ, ವೀರ್ಯಾಣು ಬರದಿದ್ದಲ್ಲಿ, ಮಿಲನವಾಗದೇ ಹೋದಲ್ಲಿ ಮತ್ತು ವೀರ್ಯಾಣು ಬರದೇ ಹೋದಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರೆಗ್ನೆನ್ಸಿ ಗರ್ಭ ಧರಿಸ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಆಗುವುದಿಲ್ಲ. ಹಾಗಾದಾಗ ಕಾರ್ಪಸ್ ಲ್ಯೂಟಿಯಂ ಎಂಬ ಗ್ರಂಥಿ ಶ್ರಿಂಕ್ ಆಗ್ತದೆ, ಅದು ವೈಡನ್ ಆಗಿರ್ತದೆ, ಹಾಸಿಗೆ ರಚಿಸಿರ್ತದೆ. ಯಾಕೆಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಅದು ರಿಸೀವ್ಸ್ ದಿ ಓವಮ್ ಅಂಡ್ this produces the ovum to receive the sperm also. ಸ್ಪರ್ಮ್ ಅಂದರೆ ವೀರ್ಯಾಣುವನ್ನು ರಿಸೀವ್ ಮಾಡಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಸ್ವೀಕರಿಸಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಸಿದ್ಧವಾಗಿರ್ತದೆ. ಇಫ್ ಅದ ಒಂದು ವೇಳೆ ಈ ವೀರ್ಯಾಣು ಬರದೇ ಹೋದಲ್ಲಿ if the sperm will not come and the meeting it does not happens or the mingling does not happens, because of this the corpus luteum shrinks. ಈ ಹಾಸಿಗೆ ಮುದ್ದೆಗೊಳ್ಳುತ್ತದೆ and the lining of the uterus also discarded. ಈ ಗರ್ಭದಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಿರ್ತದೆ ಹಾಸಿಗೆ ಬೆಡ್, what type of the bed is formed in the uterus, that is also gets vanished after 2 weeks later with the menstruations. ಅದು ಕೂಡ vanished, ಅದು ಕೂಡ ಹೋಗ್ತದೆ. ಹಾಸಿಗೆ ಕೂಡ 2 ವಾರ ಆದ ನಂತರ ಹೋಗ್ತದೆ. 2 ವಾರ ಆದ ನಂತರ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ in the sense 2 weeks after, in the sense exactly in the 14 days it got ready, and exactly after the 2 weeks in the sense in the next menstrual period that will get vanished, and the ovum also will get out from the uterus, get out through the menstrual cycle through the bleeding ಅಲ್ಲೇ ಅಂಡಾಣು ಕೂಡ ಹೋಗ್ತದೆ. So in the next, the male produces sperm in vast number. As I have already mentioned, see, women can able to produce only one ovum at a time or in each menstrual cycle. There is some cases, very rare cases, female can able to produce 2 or 3 ovum, but male can able to produce vast number of average. See, minimum average, in an average 300 million a day she can able to produce, male can able to produce the sperm. In the final process of maturation, there is also mitosis, meiosis takes place before the conception takes place in the maturation stages itself. At the final stages, in the metaphase, anaphase, prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase, in that stage, after all the stages, in that final stages, in the final stages of that maturations, the sperm develops tails. There is a tails like the structures appears. That tail structure helps the ovum, helps the sperms to move. So sperm can move, but the ovum can't able to move. Why? Because the ovum doesn't have any tail like structure, so that makes it to swim long distance. So that the tail helps the sperm to move and swim. It can swim in a long distance. For long distance it can able to swim. ನೋಡಿ, ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಸ್ಪರ್ಮ್ ಅಂದರೆ ಗಂಡಸರು ವೀರ್ಯಾಣು ಎಷ್ಟು ಬೇಕಿದ್ರು ಉತ್ಪತ್ತಿ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ ಅಂದರೆ 300 ಮಿಲಿಯನ್ನಷ್ಟು ಉತ್ಪತ್ತಿ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಅದು ಫಾರ್ ಈಚ್ ಡೇ, ಪ್ರತಿದಿನ ಕೂಡ 300ರಷ್ಟು, ಸರಿ ಸುಮಾರು 300ರಷ್ಟು ವೀರ್ಯಾಣು ಉತ್ಪತ್ತಿ ಆಗ್ತದೆ ಇನ್ ದ ಫೈನಲ್ ಪ್ರಾಸೆಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಮೆಚುರೇಷನ್. ಅಂದರೆ ಇದು ಪ್ರೌಢಾವಸ್ಥೆಗೆ ಬರಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಕಟ್ಟ ಕಡೆಯ ಘಟ್ಟದಲ್ಲಿ ದ ಸ್ಪರ್ಮ್ ಡೆವಲಪ್ಸ್. ಇಲ್ಲಿ ವೀರ್ಯಾಣುವಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ಬಾಲದಂತ ರಚನೆ ಆಗ್ತದೆ. ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ಆಫ್ ದ್ಯಾಟ್ ದ ಸ್ಪರ್ಮ್ ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಮೂವ್ ಫಾರ್ ಅ ಲಾಂಗ್ ಡಿಸ್ಟೆನ್ಸ್ ಆಲ್ಸೋ. ಇದರಿಂದಾಗಿಯೇ ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ಈಜುವಂಥ ಶಕ್ತಿ ಬರ್ತದೆ. ಫಾರ್ ಲಾಂಗ್ ಡಿಸ್ಟೆನ್ಸ್ ಇಟ್ ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಸ್ವಿಮ್. ತುಂಬ ದೂರದವರೆಗೂ ಕ್ರಮಿಸುವಂತಹ ಒಂದು ತಾಕತ್ತು, ಸಾಮರ್ಥ್ಯ ಬೆಳೀತದೆ ಇದಕ್ಕೆ. ಬಟ್ ದ ovum can't able to move because it doesn't have any tail-like structure. Upstream in the female reproductive tract through the cervix and into the fallopian tube. So the sperm can move upstream in the female reproductive tract. Sperm can move into the fallopian tube of the female through the cervix. Cervix in the sense at the end area of the female reproductive organ. That is it. Through the cervix area, the sperm comes and into the fallopian tube where the ovum placed. There it comes and unite each other. So ಇಲ್ಲಿಗೆ ಬಂದು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಮೆಚುರೇಷನ್ ಘಟ್ಟದಲ್ಲಿ ಫೀಮೇಲ್ ರಿಪ್ರೊಡಕ್ಟಿವ್ ಟ್ರ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ಗೆ ಬರ್ತದೆ, ಉತ್ಪತ್ತಿ ಕೇಂದ್ರಕ್ಕೆ ಯಾವುದು ಸ್ಪರ್ಮ, ವೀರ್ಯಾಣು ಬರ್ತದೆ. ಯಾವಾಗ ಅವರು ವಿಲನಗೊಳ್ಳುತ್ತಾರೆ ಆವಾಗ ಇದು ಸರ್ವಿಕ್ಸ್ ಮೂಲಕ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಗರ್ಭನಾಳದ ತುದಿಯ ಮೂಲಕ ಬರ್ತದೆ. ಅದರ ತುದಿಗೆ ಬಂದು ಗರ್ಭನಾಳಕ್ಕೆ ಫೆಲೋಪಿಯನ್ ಟ್ಯೂಬ್ ಗರ್ಭಾಶಯಕ್ಕೆ ಬರ್ತದೆ. ಮತ್ತೆ ಗರ್ಭಾಶಯಕ್ಕೆ ಬಂದು ಒನ್ಸ್ ಇಟ್ ಕಮ್ಸ್ ಟು ದ ಫೆಲೋಪಿಯನ್ ಟ್ಯೂಬ್ ಇಟ್ ಗೆಟ್ ಯುನೈಟ್ ವಿತ್ ದಿ ಓವಮ್. ಓಮ್ನೊಟ್ಟಿಗೆ ಮಿಂಗಲ್ ಆಗ್ತದೆ. ಓಮ್ನ ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಇದು ಮಿಂಗಲ್ ಆಗ್ತದೆ. ಇಟ್ ವಿಲ್ ಗೆಟ್ ಮಿಲನಗೊಳ್ಳುತ್ತದೆ, ಜೊತೆ ಆಗ್ತದೆ. then the new organs will born. So in fallopian tube fertilization takes place. Once they unite each other, fertilization takes place. ಅದು ಎರಡೂ ಕೂಡ ಮಿಂಗಲಾದ ನಂತರ ಫರ್ಟಿಲೈಸೇಷನ್ಸ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಇಟ್ ವಿಲ್ ಗೆಟ್ ಅ ಫರ್ಟಿಲೈಸೇಷನ್ ಇನ್ ಫ್ರಮ್ ದ ಮದರ್ಸ್ ಯುಟ್ರಸ್ itself. So it started the cell division started over there itself. ಒಂದು ಸಲ ಫೆಲೋಪಿಯನ್ ಟ್ಯೂಬ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಇದರ ಎರಡು ಮಿಂಗಲ್ ಆದ ಮೇಲೆ soon after the mingle of each other, soon after the union of each other, the sperm and the ovum mingle with each other. After this, the one cell exists in the two cells becomes one cell, and the one cell ಈ ಎರಡು ಕೋಶಗಳಿರ್ತದೆ ಒಂದು ಕೋಶ ಆಗ್ತದೆ. ಈ ಗರ್ಭದಲ್ಲೇ ಏನಾಗ್ತದೆ, ಫರ್ಟಿಲೈಸೇಷನ್ ಟೇಕ್ಸ್ ಪ್ಲೇಸ್. ಫರ್ಟಿಲೈಸೇಷನ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಇದು ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಗಾತ್ರದಲ್ಲಿ ಅದರ ಪೋಷಕಾಂಶ ಇನ್ನಷ್ಟು ತಗೊಳ್ಳುತ್ತದೆ. ಅದನ್ನು ಗಾತ್ರದಲ್ಲಿ ಸೆಲ್ ಡಿವಿಷನ್ ಜೀವಕೋಶಗಳ ವಿಭಜನೆ ಆಗ್ತದೆ. ವಿಭಜನೆ ಎಲ್ಲ ಇದೆ ಈ ಹಂತದಲ್ಲೇ ನಡೀತದೆ. ಫರ್ಟಿಲೈಸೇಷನ್ ಅಂಡ್ ದ ಸೆಲ್ ಡಿವಿಷನ್ಸ್ all the functions takes place in the fallopian tube itself. The journey is difficult. So this journey is not at all easy. It's a very difficult journey the women faces, and many sperm died. In this, many sperm died. Why? Because women has only one ovum, and for one ovum only one sperm enters the fallopian tube. So because of that, the rest of other sperms will goes to die, and the sperm live for up to 6 days. Say sperm in the men's body lives for only up to 6 days. Then it can lie in wait for the ovum. So before the mingling takes place, the sperm is waiting for the ovum till the 6 days. Till only for the 6 days it waits, and if the mingling does not take place or mating does not take place, if the mingle of the men and women does not take place, it will not get the ovum to reach it will not get the ovum to unite the ovum. The sperm will not get the ovum to unite with the ovum. The sperm will only live for 6 days unless it will not get the ovum. It will die there itself. Can lie in wait for the ovum. It can wait for the ovum only for the 6 days. After 6 days, it will not more than there in the men's body. So once it will get dies, in the next days, the men can able to produce a vast number of sperms. ನೋಡಿ, ಇದು ಈ ಸ್ಪರ್ಮ್ ವೀರ್ಯಾಣು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳುವಂಥದ್ದು ಇಟ್ ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ವೇಟ್ ಫಾರ್ ಓನ್ಲಿ 6 days. ಇದು 6 ದಿನಗಳವರೆಗೆ ಮಾತ್ರ ಕಾಯುತ್ತದೆ. ಯಾವುದಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರ? ಅಂಡಾಣುವಿಗೋಸ್ಕರ. ಒಂದು ವೇಳೆ ಅಂಡಾಣು ದೊರೆಯದೆ ಹೋದಲ್ಲಿ ಇಟ್ ಗೆಟ್ ಡಿಮಿನಿಶ್ಡ್, ಅದು ಅಲ್ಲಿಗೆ ಸತ್ತು ಹೋಗ್ತದೆ. ನಂತರ ಮಾರನೇ ದಿನ ಅಂದರೆ ನಂತರದ ದಿನಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಡೇ ಮೆನ್ ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಪ್ರೊಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ವಾಸ್ಟ್ ನಂಬರ್ ಆಫ್ sperms. So it can wait for only 6 days. Only for the 6 days it waits, and which survives for only 1 day after being released into a fallopian tube. See, which survives for only 1 day. For only 1 day it can survive. ಒಂದು ದಿನಕ್ಕೆ ಸರ್ವೈವ್ ಆಗ್ತದೆ, ಬದುಕ್ತದೆ. After being released into the fallopian tube, when it is released into a fallopian tube, when it is released into a fallopian tube, soon after that it will not get the ovum. So it can survive there for the only 1 day. Once it gets mingle with the ovum, it can able to survive. Unless it will not receive the, if in case it will not receive the ovum, it can only survive for only 1 day in the women's fallopian tube. ಸೊ ಒಂದು ವೇಳೆ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಅಂಡಾಣು ಸಿಗದೆ ಹೋದಲ್ಲಿ ಅದು ಗರ್ಭಾಶಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಬರೀ ಒಂದೇ ದಿನ ಇರ್ತದೆ. With the conceptions, the story of the prenatal development begins to unfold and starts. See, with the conceptions, after once the women can produce the ovum and men can produce the sperms, after the beginning of each two ovum and sperm, then the story of prenatal begins. In this story, the story of prenatal development takes place by this processes with this conceptions. ಈ ಕನ್ಸೆಪ್ಷನ್ಸ್ ಇಂದಾಗಿ, ಈ ಬುನಾದಿಯಿಂದಾಗಿ, ಈ ಕನ್ಸೆಪ್ಷನ್ಸ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳುವಂಥದ್ದು ಅಂಡಾಶಯ, ಅಂಡಾಣು ಮತ್ತು ವೀರ್ಯಾಣುವಿನ ಮಿಲನದಿಂದಾಗಿಯೇ ಉಂಟಾಗುವಂಥದ್ದು ಜನನ ಪೂರ್ವಾವಧಿ ಆರಂಭಗೊಳ್ಳುತ್ತದೆ. ವಾಸ್ಟ್ ಚೇಂಜಸ್ ಡ್ಯೂರಿಂಗ್ 38 weeks of pregnancy takes place during this 3 periods. See, there is a vast changes. So many changes takes place in the cells, in the cell divisions also. So in the 38 weeks in the cells, approximately 9 months and 1 week. So in the pregnancy, there is a 3 periods, as I have mentioned. The period of zygote, before once the conception over, then it's a beginning for then the root for the 3 stages of pregnancy. Then the period of zygote, period of embryo, and the period of fetus. ಒಂದು ಸಲ ಇದು ಎರಡು ಮಿಂಗಲ್ ಆದ ಮೇಲೆ ಈ ಹಂತ ಬರ್ತದೆ. ಜನನ ಪೂರ್ವ ಅವಧಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ಸಲಕ್ಕೆ ಈ ಅವಧಿ ಆದ ಮೇಲೆ ಈ 3 ಅವಧಿಗಳು ಆರಂಭಗೊಳ್ಳುತ್ತದೆ. ಸೊ 38 ಈ ಅವಧಿಗಳು ಗರ್ಭಾವಧಿ 38 ವಾರಗಳು ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಅಂದರೆ ಹತ್ರ 9 ತಿಂಗಳು 1 ವಾರ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ಬೋದು. Pregnancy divided into 3 periods, that is the period of zygote, andavadi, pindavadi, bhrunavadi. Zygote, embryo, fetus. And then the period of zygote. The period of zygote lasts about 2 weeks. See, this is the very shortest period of pregnancy. Period of zygote takes place for 2 weeks. Period of embryo lasts from 2 weeks to from the implantations to 2 months, and the period of fetus from the beginning of 3 months to end of the pregnancy. So this is the very shortest period of pregnancy. So the period of zygote lasts about 2 weeks. Only 2 ವಾರಗಳು ಮಾತ್ರ ಇರ್ತದೆ ಅಂಡಾವಧಿ. From fertilization until the tiny mass of cells drifts down and out of the fallopian tube and attaches itself to the wall of the uterus. Here the zygote attaches itself to the wall of the uterus. ಗರ್ಭಕ್ಕೆ ಅಂಟಿಕೊಂಡು ಬಿಡುತ್ತದೆ. ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದ್ಸಲಕ್ಕೆ from fertilization until the tiny mass of cells drifts down. See, the tiny mass of cells, the ovum and sperm, tiny mass of cells, that cell division takes place, and out of the fallopian tube, out of the fallopian tube, once it's take entry from the fallopian tube, it's attached to the uterus walls. It attaches itself to the uterus walls. It takes its seeds. So ಒಂದು ಸಲಕ್ಕೆ ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ಪೌಷ್ಟಿಕಾಂಶಕತೆ ಸಿಕ್ಕಿಯಾದ ನಂತರ ಅಂಟಿಲ್ ದಿ ಟೈನಿ ಮಾಸ್, ಬರೇ ಒಂದು ಸಣ್ಣ ರಚನೆ ಇರುತ್ತೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಸೆಲ್ಸ್ ಕೋಶದಲ್ಲಿ, ಮತ್ತು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಸೆಲ್ ಡಿವಿಷನ್ಸ್, ಜೀವಕೋಶಗಳ ಡಿವಿಷನ್, ಕೋಶಗಳ ರಚನೆ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇರ್ತದೆ, ಅದು ವಿಭಜನೆಗೊಳ್ತಾ ಇರ್ತದೆ. ಅಂಡ್ ಔಟ್ ಆಫ್ ದಿ ಫೆಲೋಪಿಯನ್ ಟ್ಯೂಬ್, ಗರ್ಭನಾಳದಲ್ಲಿ ಇದು ಎಲ್ಲವೂ ನಡೀತಾ ಇರ್ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಅಂಡ್ ಅಟ್ಯಾಚಸ್, ಮತ್ತೆ ಕಟ್ಟ ಕಡೆಯದಾಗಿ ಇದು ಬಂದು ಗರ್ಭಾಶಯದ ಗೋಡೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಅಂಟಿಕೊಳ್ಳುತ್ತದೆ. Then the zygote's first cell duplication. See, here also duplications happens. Duplications in the cells, mitosis, meiosis stages. In the prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase, the chromosomes duplicates into two. One chromosome duplicates into 2 chromosomes. So that's kind of duplications happens is long in the zygote stages. First cell duplications is very long period takes place and drown out and not complete until about 30 hours after conception. See, so after 30 hours of conceptions also, after the 30 hours also cell duplications happens. ಸೊ 30 ದಿನಗಳ ನಂತರ ಕೂಡ ಅಂಡಾಣು ವೀರ್ಯಾಣು ರಚನೆಗೊಂಡ 30 ಗಂಟೆಗಳ ನಂತರವೂ ಕೂಡ ಕೋಶ ವಿಭಜನೆಗಳು ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇರ್ತದೆ. ಸೊ ದೆನ್ by the 4th day 60 and 70 cells exist. See, in the fourth day after the conceptions, The 60 to 70 cells exist. 60 to 70 cells exist in cells that form and a hollow fluid filled ball called blastocyst. So this is called as a blastocyst. ಇದನ್ನು ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲೂ ಕೂಡ blastocyst ಅಂತಾನೆ ಬರೀಬೇಕಷ್ಟೇ. Then see in the fourth day, ನಾಲ್ಕನೇ ದಿನ 60 to 70 cells exist in the, see, soon after the ovum and sperm mingle after each other. The conceptions, soon after the conception, after the conceptions in the fourth day, 60 to 70 cells in the cell division, 60 to 70 cells exist and will exist in that period in the hollow fluid, in the fluid, in the sense in the water-like structure, water-like fluid and filled ball. It's like a ball-like structure that is called as a blastocyst. ಬಾಲ್ ಲೈಕ್ ಸ್ಟ್ರಕ್ಚರ್, ಬಾಲ್ ಇದು ಫ್ಲೂಯಿಡ್, ಇದು ಒಂದು ಚೆಂಡಿನಂತಹ ದ್ರವವುಳ್ಳಂತಹ ದ್ರವ ರೂಪದ ಚೆಂಡಿನಂತಹ ರಚನೆಯಾಗ್ತದೆ. ಇದು 60ರಿಂದ 70 ಕೋಶಗಳು ಹುಟ್ಟಿಕೊಳ್ಳುತ್ತದೆ ನಾಲ್ಕನೇ ದಿನಕ್ಕೆ. ಅದನ್ನೇ ಹೇಳಿದು ಬ್ಲಾಸ್ಟೋಸಿಸ್ಟ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. ದ ಸೆಲ್ಸ್ ಆನ್ ದಿ ಇನ್ಸೈಡ್ ಕಾಲ್ಡ್ the cells, which is there, see the cells in the outer layer, inner layer also there. Cells inside is called as embryonic disc. ಇದನ್ನೇ ಪಿಂಡ ಅಂತ ಪಿಂಡಾವಧಿ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. The cells inside this one disc is called as embryonic disc. The cells inside the disc is embryonic, where the birth, the baby organs takes, the baby's the main organs takes place here. The main body structure takes place in the embryonic disc and will become the new organisms. That the new organism takes place in the ಎಂಬ್ರಿಯಾನಿಕ್ ಡಿಸ್ಕ್. ಪಿಂಡಾವಧಿ, ಪಿಂಡ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. ಈ ಪಿಂಡದ ರಚನೆ ಆಗ್ತದೆ ಒಂದು ಜೀವಕೋಶದಲ್ಲಿ. ಒಳಗಿನ ಭಾಗಕ್ಕೆ ಹೇಳುದು ಪಿಂಡ ಅಂತ. ಈ ಒಳಗಿನ ಭಾಗ, ದ ಇನ್ಸೈಡ್ ದ ಸೆಲ್ಸ್ ಈಸ್ ಕಾಲ್ಡ್ ಅಸ್ ಎಂಬ್ರಿಯಾನಿಕ್ ಡಿಸ್ಕ್, ಪಿಂಡ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. ಈ ಪಿಂಡ ದಟ್ ಬಿಕಮ್ಸ್ ಅ ನ್ಯೂ ಆರ್ಗ್ಯಾನಿಸಮ್ಸ್. ಆಫ್ಟರ್ ದಟ್ ದಿಸ್ embryo becomes a fetus, then fetus becomes a newly born child, then the new individuals. ಸೊ ಹೊಸದಾಗಿ ಹುಟ್ಟುವಂತಹ ಒಂದು ಜೀವವಾದ ಎಂಬ್ರಿಯೋ, ಈ ಪಿಂಡವೇ ಮತ್ತೆ ಒಂದು ಜೀವಿಯಾಗಿ ಹುಟ್ಟುತ್ತದೆ. ಔಟರ್ ರಿಂಗ್ ಆಫ್ ಸೆಲ್ಸ್, say inside is called as embryonic disc, outer which covers the embryos is called as termed as trophoblast. Trophoblast, one which covers the embryonic disc, will provide protective covering and nourishments, which gives the protective covering and nourishments. See, outer cover which protects the embryos and which protects the, not only protecting the and covering the embryo, but also gives the nourishments as well as nutrition for the embryos to get well developed, to get developed enough. So the next is implantation.
Say implantation. Between the 7th and the 9th days, implantation occurs. Implantation is nothing but once the conception got over, the it's a seeds, then the how the new organisms going to, new development of the new organisms going to take place from this seeds in the sense that zygote, the ovum and sperms seeds. That seeds is called as ovum and sperms ball is called as seeds. From that how the developmental organism, development of the newly organism takes place. See, between the 7th and the 9th days of implantation occurs. Once the zygote occurs, after that once the ovum and sperm mingle each other, after that the 7th and the 9th days implantation occurs. Once the implantation occurs, blastocyst burrows deep into the uterine lining. Says in the uterine places, which borrows the zygote, these seeds, and deep into the uterine lining. uterine ಗರ್ಭಕ್ಕೆ, ಗರ್ಭನಾಳದ ಒಳಗೆ, ಗರ್ಭಕೋಶಕ್ಕೆ ಅದನ್ನು ಎಳಿತದೆ, ಅದನ್ನು ತಗೊಂಡು ಬರ್ತದೆ. which one blastocyst borrows these zygote or these joined cells, the ovum and sperm balls into the uterine lining, well surrounded by the woman's nourishing blood. See, from there, the zygote is surrounded by the nourishing blood. So the blastocyst take place important role in this, which borrows the zygote into the uterine lining, and which surrounded by the nourishing blood, which nourishes this embryo, which nourishes this zygote, which is cells, and starts to grow earnest. So developing takes place after this. Once the this cells got the nourishment from the woman's blood, then nourishing the blood, nourishments from the woman's blood, then it starts to grow slowly. Newly organism, that cells becomes the newly organisms formation starts. At the first, the trophoblast multiplies fastest. At the first, trophoblast in the sense the which covers the embryonic disc, the outer layer of the embryonic disc, which protects the embryonic disc, that develops very fast, multiplies fast. Why? Because which covers, which produces, which forms another covers and another cover, which forms several covers to protect the embryonic disc. So protoplasm multiplies very fast at the beginning, then later it slows down its development, then it forms, see, trophoblast forms one more membrane. Membrane is nothing but a cover, it covers the embryos. So membrane, and again forms the membrane that covers, called as amnion. One more cover is called as amnion ಅಂತ ಹೇಳುವಂತಹ ಪದರವನ್ನು ಮತ್ತೆ ಈ ಟ್ರೋಬೋಪ್ಲಾಸ್ಟ್ ಉತ್ಪತ್ತಿ ಮಾಡ್ತದೆ. This amnion encloses the developing organism in amniotic fluid. This amnion produces the amniotic fluid. Amniotic fluid ಅನ್ನು ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ amniotic ದ್ರವ ಅಂತಲೇ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. which produces, which encloses, which closes, and which very nicely protects the developing organism in the sense embryonic disc, in the sense it covers the unborn baby in the embryo periods, in the this periods itself. Then the amnion helps, this amnion, once again this embryon helps, see, the trophoblast which forms the amnion, which produces the, and which gives protections to the newly organism by producing the amniotic fluid, also which helps to keeps that amniotic fluids keeps the temperature of the baby in a constant way, in the normal way, which keeps the temperature of the body, which not rises the temperature as well as which not reduces the temperature, which keeps the inner environment of the baby and the prenatal world in a constant way. So ಇದು ಅಮ್ನಿಯಾನ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳುವಂಥದ್ದು ಅಂದರೆ ಗರ್ಭದ ಒಳಗಿನ ವಾತಾವರಣವನ್ನು ಸರಿಯಾದ ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಸಮತಟ್ಟಾಗಿ ಇಡ್ತದೆ. ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ವಿಚ್ ಪ್ರೊವೈಡ್ಸ್ ಅ ಕ್ಯೂಷನ್ ಅಗೇನ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಎನಿ ಜಾಲ್ಸ್ caused by the women's moments. If there is any problem, there may be any problems occur for the women's during her zygote period. Why? Because that matter, that awareness does not comes to the women that they are, whether they are pregnant or not, because this only comes to the aware only during the embryos period, only they comes to know they are pregnant. So during this period, if anything happens to the mother's movements, in the mother's movements, if the mother jumps or mother fell down, nothing will happen. Why? Because this amnion keeps the temperature of the prenatal in a constant way, as well as it provides the cushions, separate seats or separate place for the embryos, the newly born organisms, and which cause any damages which is caused by the woman's moments also does not cause any damages to the new cells or new organisms. Then one more is there, the yolk sac ಅಂತ ಹೇಳುವಂಥದ್ದು emerges, that produces the blood cells until the liver, which produces the blood cells, ರಕ್ತನಾಳಗಳನ್ನು ಉತ್ಪತ್ತಿ ಮಾಡ್ತದೆ, which produces the blood cells, which produces the nourishments, which supplies the nourishments to the different parts of the body, not only until the liver and bone marrow are mature enough to work. See, which produces and which supplies supplies the nourishments to the body of the newly organism until when the liver and bone marrow are mature enough to work. Till the liver and bone marrow takes important role in the zygote period, especially why, because which produces the blood cells. If once the liver and bone marrow are mature enough, then they are the responsible to produce the blood cells to the blood cells. So until that, they, before they are becoming mature, before the liver and the bone marrow become mature, the yolk cells produces the blood cells. After that, once the liver and bone marrow become mature, then the liver and bone marrow produces and gives the nourishments to the newly born organisms. Then bone marrow is nothing but it is there in the spinal cord itself. Then here I have shown one figure. This I have taken from the book Laura E. Burke's. See, here they have mentioned the fallopian tube. See, first zygote. Here the ovaries produces the ovum. This is there in the, this fallopian tube only there in the women's body. So here ovaries ಅಂಡಾಶಯ ಅಂಡಾಣುವನ್ನು ಉತ್ಪತ್ತಿ ಮಾಡ್ತದೆ. Waiting for the sperm. Once the sperms, once the mating takes place, the sperms get mingle with the and unite with the ovum. Then it slowly passes to the, it slowly moves above, then zygote happens. See, because the ovum, I have already mentioned, the ovum has not doesn't have the capacity to move, but the sperm has the capacity to move. Why? Because it has a tail like a structure. So as the zygote moves down to the fallopian tube, it moves to the fallopian tube because of the tail in the sperm. Once it get mingled, and this becomes a small balls, and then it downs to the fallopian ball. It downs to the fallopian ball. It moves. It duplications takes place at first slowly. Duplication is the cell division during the prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase. The cell divisions takes place. Duplications of that. One chromosomes duplicates into a two. So it duplicates at first slowly, then rapidly duplications happens. Then the blastocyst take place. See, in the middle of the this fallopian tube, blastocyst take place. See, blastocyst by the fourth day after this conception, after this conceptions of the zygote, in the fourth day after zygote, then it forms a hollow, a fluid filled ball. It's like a fluid filled, water filled ball. Filled ball. It looks like water filled ball. Why? Because the new organisms formations does not takes place. The structure of the body does not takes place over here. In this period, that development will not takes place here. That called as blastocyst. The fluid filled ball is called as a blastocyst. The inner cells called as the embryonic disc. They see here they have mentioned the embryonic inner cells is a embryonic disc is nothing but a baby, and the outer is called as a tropoplast one, which covers and protects the embryonic disc, and which nourishes which not only protects the embryonic disc but also which covers, which protects the nourishments to the nutrients to the embryonic disc also. Then the implantation occurs at the end of the first week. End of the first week, in the sense, see that blastocyst takes place in the fourth day, and in the fifth one, in the seventh day, at the end of the first week, in the sense at the end of the first week, in the sense in the seventh day, the blastocyst begins to implant in the uterine lining. The uterine lining takes place, the blastocyst. Why? Because this blastocyst helps the cells to begin there in the uterine wall itself, in the by forming a uterine lining. ಗರ್ಭಾಶಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಉಳಿಯುವ ಹಾಗೆ ಮಾಡ್ತದೆ ಈ ಕೋಶವನ್ನು. Next one is, see, placenta and umbilical cord happens. umbilical cord occurs. See, by the end of the second week, in the sense at the end of the zygote period, the cells of the trophoblast, see, trophoblast against the outer layer of the blastocyst. The inner layer is called as embryonic disc, outer layer that covers the embryonic disc, that form once more one another protective cells, another protective cover, in the sense membrane, that is called as chorion. Chorion is a cover that comes after the trophoblast. Chorion, which surrounds the amnion. Once more, it surrounds the amnion. Chorion is surrounds by the amnion. Amnion is a fluid-like structure. That is, see, from the chorion, it's a chorion structure is like a trainy hair-like a structure. Small hair is there. ಸಣ್ಣ ಸಣ್ಣ ಕೂದಲಿನಂತ ರಚನೆ ಇದೆ. Or blood vessels, it's like a vessels in the sense of plate vessels, dishes like blood vessels in the sense ರಕ್ತದ ತಟ್ಟೆಗಳ ತರಹ ರಚನೆ. ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಟೋಟಲಿ ಟೈನಿ ಹೇರ್ ಲೈಕ್ ಸಣ್ಣ ಸಣ್ಣ ಕೂದಲಿನಂತ ರಚನೆ ಇರ್ತದೆ in the chorion. So then the placenta will permit, placenta that helps the, see, placenta is nothing but the mother's intestines that connects to the baby's umbilical cord. So baby, once the babies comes out from the mother's uterus, the umbilical cord, the surgeons or the doctors will cut the umbilical cord. So after that, the nourishment, the baby will not get the nourishment from the mother's body. The baby will get the nourishment through the mother's milk, and after that directly from the food. So placenta, this when the baby is inside the mother's womb, in inner area of the mother's womb, that will ferment, so that womb or that embryo will, or that newly organisms will get the food and oxygen from the placenta. So placenta will successfully reach the food and oxygen to the newly organisms, to reach the new organisms in waste products are carried out. So this helps to not only which carries or which supplies to the oxygen and organisms to the newly organisms, but also which gets carried away the waste products of the newly organisms. ಕೆಟ್ಟ ಬೇಡದ ವಸ್ತುವನ್ನು ಕೂಡ, ವಿಸರ್ಜನೆಯನ್ನು ಕೂಡ ಇದು ತೆಗೀತದೆ. ಬರೀ ಆಹಾರ ಮತ್ತು ಆಮ್ಲಜನಕವನ್ನು ಮಾತ್ರ ಇದು ಸರಬರಾಜು ಮಾಡುವ ಕೆಲಸ ಅಲ್ಲ. ಪ್ಲಾಸೆಂಟಾ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಹೊಕ್ಕುಳ ಬಳ್ಳಿ, ಇದು ಬರೀ ಅದನ್ನು ಮಾತ್ರ ಅಲ್ಲ ಮಾಡೋದು, ವೇಸ್ಟ್ ಪ್ರಾಡಕ್ಟ್ಸ್, ಬೇಡದ ವಿಸರ್ಜಿತ ವಸ್ತುವನ್ನು ಕೂಡ ತೆಗೀತದೆ. ದೆನ್ ಪ್ಲಾಸೆಂಟಾ ಈಸ್ ಕನೆಕ್ಟೆಡ್ ಟು ದಿ ಡೆವಲಪಿಂಗ್ ಆರ್ಗ್ಯಾನಿಸಮ್ಸ್ by the umbilical cord. Placenta is connected to the developing organism. I have already mentioned. Says the mother placenta, in the sense mother's this one intestines is connected to the baby's newly developing organisms umbilical cord. That is called as umbilical cord, connected to the organism by the umbilical cord. So mother's intestine is connected to the baby's umbilical cord. So in the spirit, the cord first appears, the spinal cord appears first. Once the spinal cord and the brain appears first, then the all other body organs, development of the body organisms takes place, or the formation of the body organs takes place. So in the spirit, cord first appears as a primitive body stakes. At first, in the primary stage, the cord appears first. Then during the course of pregnancy, during this course of pregnancy, it will grow to a length of 1 to 3 feet. Remember, don't get shocked over this. 1 to 3 feet in the sense it is there in the folding positions, like folding position. So it is in a 1 to 3 feet. We can't able to predict the size of this. We can't even able to agree with this. Why? Because it is in a folding position. We can't able to see the exact length. It is in a folding. It is not in a straight way. Straight length is not there. It is in a folding way. So its feet is 1 to 3 feet. So the umbilical cord contains one large vein, that is one large pipe-like structure which delivers the blood loaded with this nutritions, which supplies the blood loaded with the nutritions, see, which supplies the blood which loaded with the nutritions. ಅದು ರಕ್ತವನ್ನು ಸರಬರಾಜು ಮಾಡ್ತದೆ. See, the umbilical cord which supplies the umbilical cords from the mother's placenta itself, it supplies the newly organisms to the newly organisms blood loaded with the nutrients, and two arteries which removes the waste products, and two arteries also which gives which delivers which helps to removes and which helps the newly organisms to excrete and removes the waste products into that part, two arteries. And then by the end of the period of zygote, at the end of the period of zygote ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಕಟ್ಟ ಕಡೆ ಪಿಂಡಾವಧಿಯ ಕಟ್ಟ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಅಂಡಾವಧಿಯ ಕಟ್ಟ ಕಡೆಯ ಹಂತದಲ್ಲಿ the developing organism has found food and shelter in the uterus itself. So it's finally it gets the food and shelter in the uterus. It starts to adjust to the uterus places. The developing organism or the new organism which are formed in the mother's womb start to adjusting to the mother's uterus. Why? Because it gets its food and shelter in the mother's uterus at the end of the zygote, in the sense at the end of the second week. These dramatic beginnings takes place before most mothers know they are pregnant. Why? Because mothers come to know pregnant only after 2 months. Why? Because if once the menstruation gets stops, they are going to check. They are going to consult the gynecologist. Why this doesn't happen? Then they only come to know that they are pregnant. After the pregnancy test, they come to know they are pregnant. So this period, the zygote period only takes place in the till the second week. So all these changes does not does not comes to the awareness of the mothers. Why? Because they doesn't know what is happens inside of her body. So why? Because after 2 months, during the at the end of the embryo stages, or at the beginning of the fetus period, she comes to know that she is a pregnant lady. She is a pregnant, and these dramatic beginnings takes place before most of the mothers know they are pregnant. So before that, they are not these changes are not comes to the awareness of the mothers. They will not come to know that they are pregnant. So these are the references what I have referred. One is Elizabeth Hurlock's Developmental Psychology, that is the fifth edition, McGraw-Hill's publications, and Laura E. Burke's Child Development book, sixth and seventh editions, Prentice Hall of Publications, India Limited. These are all the two books I have referred. From these two books, I have got enough information. For you also, I am suggesting same. If you want much more information, we are sending the study material. So, if you want much more information, please refer these books from your library. Then the MCQs, what all the mentions, see, I didn't mention here the answers. Why? Because I have already go through the sessions. So through that sessions itself, you may come to know that there's a you will come to know the answers. So that is your work, your homework, or you take it as an assignment. Pregnancy divided into dash stages. From the beginning itself, I am keep on telling pregnancy divided into dash stages. 4, 3, 5, 2. These are the options. Find out the answers. Then dash secretes the hormones that prepares the lining of the uterus, that prepares or that provides the bed in the uterus, that prepares the bed in the uterus to receive the ovum. Dash hormones. See, the corpus luteum, fallopian tube, corpus callosum, then the none of the above. Just to find out the answers, so only one word I have mentioned over here. Only one organs which secretes the hormones, only one gland I have mentioned over there, Then in the dash period, the developing organism has found food and shelter in the uterus. In the dash period, at the end of which period, the developing organism, the newly organism, finding its food and shelter in the uterus. In the zygote period, or embryo period, or in the fetal period, or conceptions. So find it out. Then next is normally pregnancy takes place dash weeks. I have mentioned in the weeks also, I have mentioned in the months also, I have mentioned. So 30 weeks, 24 weeks, 36 weeks, 28 weeks. Then the placenta is connected to the developing organism by the placenta. The mother's placenta is connected to the developing organism by the dash. See the answers: the fallopian tube, umbilical cord, amniotic fluid. Which is the answers? Just find out. And thank you for, I hereby mentioning my thank you for listening my sessions. I will stop my session by here itself. Thank you for listening.